think? Are you surprised by Russell Wilson's comments about his offensive line?
I am a bit. I mean, he included himself, and he can get rid of the ball faster, right? You know, like he included himself, but I am a bit. I'm a bit surprised by that. Mahomes also pointed after the game to his O-line. I'm surprised when quarterbacks do that. They have to rely on those guys. But I'm also a little surprised because the Seahawks had a pretty good offensive line once upon a time. Then they traded Max Unger, the center, remember that, for Jimmy Graham, and the line fell apart. They could still play defense, but they really weren't protecting them. I feel like in recent years, and they weren't investing anything in it in the draft, but then that started changing, and in recent years, I feel like this year, last year, the offensive line has gotten better, and really the issue's been the defense. So I'm a little surprised that he calls out guys on his side of the ball who, at least in my first impression when he said it is, I feel like the offensive line has played better for him recently. They have a little more talent on it. They've played better than they did, let's say, 3 or 4 years ago. It's really the defense that let them down. I was a bit surprised, Ryan.
Yeah, I was surprised by it, too, just because I'm used to Russell Wilson saying the right thing and that being important to him. And now, I think when you start to kind of criticize your offensive line, and he didn't necessarily point to them specifically, but when you say you've been hit too much and you say you've been sacked too much, we all know and understand what that means. But throwing himself in there is kind of an afterthought. You know, it's like me playing free safety and being like, man, I'm tired of us getting bombed on. You know what I'm saying? We're always getting beat deep outside. And, you know, like, I could go tackle them after they catch it on them, but godly. You know, and so it's one of those things that we understand as a quarterback you don't want to get hit. And if you start to think about your longevity in this league, you understand that as well individually. But you don't have to say it, right? If that's something that you think needs to be worked on, if that's something that you think you need to progress, go to John Snyder, go to Pete Carroll. And we have to remember the reason that Jimmy Graham was brought to Seattle was so Russell Wilson had an extra weapon. Right, that was with the thought in mind that they were moving away from the Legion of Boom, moving away from being this physical running attack that was the way that they tried to win games and saying, okay, we got a dude at quarterback that we've given a new contract. Let's roll with him. And that actually hasn't worked for him. And so we've seen, because of this offensive line, sometimes Russell Wilson make these amazing plays and scramble around and do some of the things we credit the Aaron Rodgers and the Patrick Mahomes with. But he's also taken some sacks. And so I think that's a team thing. But for me, when you're a guy like Russell Wilson, who we all perceive as the ultimate leader, right? It's not necessarily that we think he's the best leader ever, but we also can't point to other people who we believe are better leaders other than, you know, you say Tom Brady because he wins that way. And so that's
Ryan,
weird to me.
You bring up Tom Brady. Consider how Brady led the offensive line really this season in a brand new situation. And I'll be, okay, look, the Bucs have elite talent on the offensive line, and they were a top 5 offensive line basically all year. But they had that very bad game in Chicago. It's kind of washed over by the fact that Brady made that mental error at the end of the game. But until then, the offensive line was penalized heavily, and it was killing drives. And Brady was chewing those guys out, right? And look at how they wound up blocking for him in the Super Bowl, right? He was clean, pressured 4 times on 30 dropbacks, the best in his Super Bowl career. So there is some responsibility of a quarterback leading the line. And you hear about, like, quarterbacks buying Rolexes and stuff for you know, and taking them to dinner and stuff. Their offensive line, that ain't what Russell Wilson's doing. These aren't Rolexes he's handing out right now. You know, these guys are not getting A's on their report card from Russell Wilson in this statement.
Yeah, listen, I'm not one of those dudes that's critical of Tom Brady and the way he handles things. I'm only critical of the way that we approach the way Tom Brady handles things as opposed to other people. When we're like, it's okay for Brady to act like this, but not okay for other quarterbacks. I'm not a fan of that. But I do feel that when Tom Brady is getting on his offensive line, when he's getting on his wide receivers, he's doing that as a leader. I have no issue with that. Like, I have no issue with heat of the battle stuff. But when you've had a month, right, since you lost the game to the Los Angeles Rams, to sit in your house and think when you're making these statements and they aren't emotional, when you're a guy like Russell Wilson, who, 1, I respect his intelligence, 2, I know he's a good dude, you had an opportunity to internalize these things and think, and you still say them. Because we're smart enough to know that Russell Wilson understands the impact of these words. It's the reason he's never said anything that could be misconstrued or misunderstood to this point. It's the reason he's always focused on his perception. So this is strategic. Russell Wilson wants us to talk about this offensive line. Russell Wilson wants Seattle to do something. Russell Wilson wants to point out these things. I want to have more of a say-so in what's going on. Here is what all these other things say to me too, though. One, they say that I'm worried about Russell Wilson's legacy. I'm worried about how Russell Wilson plays individually. Two, what it's saying publicly is, you know what? It really ain't me, y'all. It ain't me that we ain't won. Like, they don't let me say who could come in. They really ain't blocking for me like that. I'm trying to do all that I can. We need to get some more people in here. We need different people. Maybe if I get to say who we get, we'd be better. I'd be more protected. And that's
hey, Ryan,
very
real
strange
quick, let me ask you
and
one
out
question.
of the ordinary, out of character for him. Yo.
Who's going to protect you from Aaron Donald? Like, what are you going to get? You're going to clone Walter
Right.
Jones and convince him to play defense,
Right.
on the interior of the line or something? Aaron
Right.
Donald's coming to get you. That ain't even your offensive line's fault. It was not going to be stopped.
Hey, that's 100% true, man. When you play in the Los Angeles Rams, he gonna get at you regardless. But I just think that even though we're moving to guys taking over their careers and guys having more input, they have to be smart about how they do it. And sometimes, especially a guy like Russell Wilson, who will be in Seattle.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.